The dim glow of a single fluorescent bulb flickered over the sterile hospital corridor, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts on the linoleum floor. It was just past midnight in the small town of Ridgewood, where the air hung heavy with the scent of antiseptic and distant rain. In room 214, 8-year-old Lucas huddled in his bed, his small frame shaking under the thin blanket. His wide eyes, framed by dark lashes, darted toward the door every few seconds, as if expecting the world to crash in again. He hadn't spoken a word since the accident 3 months ago. Not a whisper, not a cry. The doctors called it selective mutism, a wall his mind had built after the crash that took his mother and left him scarred inside and out. But Lucas's silence wasn't just fear. It was a fortress, and no one could breach it. His father, Marcus, a weathered biker with tattoos snaking up his arms like ancient runes, slumped in the vinyl chair beside the bed. Marcus's leather vest, patched with the emblem of the Iron Vipers, a coiled serpent under a blood-red moon, hung off his broad shoulders. He'd ridden in from the dusty highways of the Midwest, leaving his crew behind to keep vigil here. The other families in the ward whispered about him, the outlaw with grease-stained hands and a perpetual scowl, who growled at nurses and scared the orderlies. They didn't understand why a man like Marcus, president of a motorcycle club, rumored to run with rough edges, would spend every night in this place. To them, he was a relic of chaos, unfit for a child's world. But Marcus's eyes, hardened by years of lost brothers and broken roads, softened only when they fell on Lucas. He reached out, his calloused fingers brushing the boy's hair, but Lucas flinched, turning away as if the touch burned. Outside, the parking lot hummed with the low rumble of engines idling under sodium lights. Marcus's bike, a black Harley with chrome accents scarred from 1,000 miles, stood sentinel like a loyal steed. He'd promised Elena, his wife, on their wedding day, under a desert sky, that he'd always protect their boy, no matter the cost. That promise echoed in his chest now, a weight heavier than any chain he'd ever worn. But how do you protect a son who won't let you in? The doctors had tried everything. Speech therapy, play sessions, even a child psychologist who left shaking after Marcus's glare. He's choosing silence, they'd say, but Marcus knew better. It was the wreckage that had stolen Lucas's voice, the twisted metal, the sirens, the moment Elena's hand slipped from his in the chaos. And now, in this cold hospital, Marcus felt his own words failing him. The door to the room creaked open, and a nurse poked her head in, her scrubs a faded blue under the harsh light. "Mr. Hale, visiting hours are over," she said softly, though her eyes held no real authority. Marcus didn't move, his jaw set like iron. "He's my son. Ain't no hour that changes that." She hesitated, then nodded, retreating with a sigh. The staff pitied Lucas, the boy lost in his quiet storm. But they feared Marcus, the biker who arrived with the scent of exhaust and leather, who parked his machine like a challenge to the world. Whispers spread through the nurses' station. "That man's trouble. Keep the kid away from him." They didn't see the vigils Marcus kept, the way he'd trade his cut for a storybook if it meant hearing Lucas laugh again. Dawn crept in slowly, painting the sky outside in bruised purples and golds. Marcus stood, stretching his aching back, and stepped into the corridor for coffee that tasted like regret. The hospital was waking, beeps from monitors, the shuffle of feet, the faint aroma of breakfast trays. He leaned against the vending machine, staring at his reflection in the glass, lines etched deep from too many sunsets on the open road. Back with the Vipers, his brothers waited for word. "Ride it out, Prez," his vice, a grizzled vet named Jax, had said over the phone. "We'll back your play." But this wasn't a turf war. It was a war against silence, against the invisible chains binding his boy. That's when she appeared, A new face in the morning shift. Nurse Elena Ramirez, though no one knew her full name yet, moved with a quiet grace that cut through the bustle. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat bun, and her name tag gleamed under the lights. She carried a chart, her steps purposeful as she approached room 214. Marcus watched from afar, curiosity flickering in his guarded eyes. She'd transferred in overnight, they said, from a city hospital down south. Something about her seemed different. No clipboard clutched like a shield, no hurried glances at the biker in the corner. Inside the room, Lucas stirred, his small hands twisting the blanket. Elena entered softly, closing the door with a gentle click. She didn't speak at first. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed, her face level with his. The boy froze, expecting the usual questions, the prodding, but Elena raised her hands, fingers forming deliberate shapes in the air, sign language, fluid and inviting. "Hello," her gestures said, a smile warming her brown eyes. "I'm Elena. Do you like stories?" Lucas's breath caught. No one had ever done that before. His eyes widened, not in fear, but in recognition, a spark in the darkness. He hesitated, then mirrored her sign, tentative fingers spelling out, yes. For the first time in months, a bridge formed, silent but real. Outside, Marcus paused mid-sip, hearing the muffled exchange through the door. He couldn't see the signs, but he felt the shift, like the first rumble of thunder before a storm breaks. Word spread quickly through the ward. The new nurse, the one who signed with the silent boy. Nurses clustered at the station, murmuring in awe. "Did you see?" he responded. But Marcus, leaning against the wall, felt a deeper pull. This woman, with her steady hands and unspoken understanding, had pierced the veil he'd failed to breach. Who was she, really? And what old wounds did her gestures hide? As the sun climbed higher, casting golden shafts through the windows, Marcus realized this was no coincidence. It was a promise unfolding, one that might just redeem them all. The hospital's rhythm pulsed on, but in that room time slowed. Elena's signs wove tales of far-off places, of roads that led to healing, and Lucas leaned in, his silence cracking like dawn over the horizon. Marcus watched from the doorway, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and suspicion. The biker world he'd known, harsh, unyielding, clashed with this fragile moment. Yet here, in the quiet language of hands, he saw a path forward. For Lucas, for them. By midday, the boy's first real smile emerged, faint but undeniable. Elena nodded, her own eyes misting. "We'll talk more," she signed, "about everything." Marcus stepped back, the weight of his leather vest feeling lighter for the first time. Little did he know, Elena carried her own scars, promises from a past shadowed by loss, much like his. And as the day unfolded, their worlds began to entwine, setting the stage for truths that would test loyalties and forge unbreakable bonds. The afternoon sun filtered through the half-drawn blinds of room 214, casting striped patterns across the linoleum like bars of light trapping secrets. Lucas sat propped against his pillows, his small hands moving with a hesitance that spoke of long-buried trust. Elena mirrored him effortlessly, her fingers dancing in the air. "What's your favorite animal?" And for the first time, the boy's face lit with a flicker of genuine curiosity. The room smelled of fresh linens and the faint metallic tang of hospital trays, but beneath it all lingered the subtle warmth of connection, fragile as a spider's thread. Marcus lingered in the doorway, his broad frame casting a long shadow that reached toward the bed. He hadn't entered fully. Something held him back, a mix of gratitude and wariness that twisted in his gut like a bad turn on a rain-slicked road. The iron viper's patch on his vest caught the light, a reminder of the life he'd paused for this, brothers who rode with him through fire, but none who could mend a child's shattered voice. He'd seen Elena's signs through the crack in the door earlier, the way Lucas's eyes had locked on hers, and it stirred memories he'd buried deep. Elena, his late wife, teaching their boys simple gestures on lazy summer evenings by the garage, the rumble of bikes fading into laughter. Now, as Eleanor signed a story about a lost wolf pup finding its pack under a starry sky, Marcus felt the pull of that old promise. Keep him safe no matter what, his wife had whispered before the crash, her hand on his as thunder rolled in the distance. He'd failed then, the screech of tires and shatter of glass replaying in his nightmares. But this nurse, Elena Ramirez, her name tag read, seemed to carry the same quiet strength, her dark eyes holding depths he couldn't yet fathom. She glanced up, noticing him, and offered a nod that was neither inviting nor dismissive, just steady. "Mr. Hale," she said softly after the session, stepping into the hall as Lucas dozed, a faint smile lingering on his lips. The corridor buzzed with the midday shift change, carts rattling, voices overlapping in hurried tones, but her presence cut through it like a calm in the storm. "Your son's responding well, sign language. It's his bridge right now. Have you tried it with him before?" Marcus crossed his arms, the leather of his vest creaking. His voice came low, gravelly from too many cigarettes and unspoken grief. "Tried everything. Books, toys, even riding him around on the bike when he was little. Nothing stuck after. He trailed off, jaw tightening. The accident hung between them like smoke, the kind that clings to clothes after a bonfire. Elena didn't press. Instead, she pulled a small notebook from her pocket, sketching quick signs on the page. "I love you, Dad." "Start here," she said. "Small. Consistent." He took the paper, fingers brushing hers briefly, rough against her smooth skin. A spark of something unfamiliar jolted him, hope, maybe, or the ghost of camaraderie from his days in the service, before the Vipers became his anchor. "Why you doing this?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "Ain't just your job." Eleanor's expression softened, but her gaze held a guarded edge, like a road scarred by old potholes. She glanced toward the window, where the parking lot stretched out, Marcus's Harley gleaming under the sun like a faithful shadow. "I lost someone too," she said quietly. "A brother in a wreck years back. He went silent after, wouldn't let anyone in. Signing saved him. And me." Her words carried the weight of personal redemption, a promise she'd made to herself in the dim glow of a recovery room much like this one. But she didn't elaborate. Some scars were best left covered, at least for now. As the day wore on, Marcus found himself lingering longer in the hospital, the sterile halls, a far cry from the open throttle of the highway. He watched Elena move through her rounds, comforting a feverish elder with a gentle touch, coordinating with doctors whose clipboards fluttered like flags in the wind. The staff's whispers about him had shifted. Now they included her in the murmurs. "That biker's not so bad," one orderly said over coffee, "and her, she's a miracle worker." But Marcus sensed undercurrents. The way Elena's smile faltered when a particular doctor's name was mentioned, or how she avoided the East Wing where administrative offices loomed. By evening, the sky bruised with twilight hues, and Lucas stirred awake, his hands already forming questions. Elena returned for a quick check, signing, "Hungry?" The boy nodded, then hesitated, glancing toward the door where Marcus stood. With deliberate slowness, Lucas raised his hands. "Dad, stay." The word, unspoken but clear, hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. He stepped forward, sinking into the chair, and tried the sign from the notebook. "I'm here." His large hands fumbled, but the intent landed true. Lucas's eyes met his, a tentative bridge forming. Outside, the first stars pricked the darkening sky, and Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from Jax. "Crew's gearing up. Need us?" He pocketed it without replying. This fight wasn't for engines and turf. It was for the boy who'd inherited his silence and his fire. Elena watched the exchange, her own heart echoing with echoes of a past promise, to heal what was broken, no matter the cost. Little did Marcus know. Her transfer to Ridgewood General wasn't random. Whispers of hospital corruption, funds siphoned for personal gain, vulnerable patients overlooked, had drawn her here, a quiet crusader in scrubs. And in Marcus she saw an ally, rough-hewn but honorable, whose loyalty could tip the scales. As night deepened, the room filled with the soft rhythm of breathing, punctuated by the distant hum of the city. Marcus leaned back, the notebook clutched in his fist, feeling the first cracks in his armored world. Elena slipped out, her footsteps fading down the hall, but the connection lingered, a thread weaving through loss toward something unbreakable. In the quiet, Lucas signed once more before sleep claimed him. Tomorrow. And Marcus nodded, the weight of unspoken oaths settling like dew on the dawn. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The moon hung low over Ridgewood General, a silver sickle slicing through the veil of night clouds, bathing the parking lot in ethereal light. Marcus's Harley stood sentinel under it, its chrome edges catching glints like whispered secrets. Inside room 214, the air was thick with the scent of cooling chamomile tea Eleanor had brewed from a hidden stash in her locker, a small ritual to ease the edges of sleepless hours. Lucas lay curled on his side, his breathing steady now, the faint rise and fall of his chest, a rhythm Marcus had memorized like the roar of his engine on an empty highway. The boy's hands twitched in sleep, as if dreaming in signs, chasing shadows of words long silenced. Marcus hadn't left his post all evening, the vinyl chair creaking under his weight like an old friend's protest. The notebook Elena had given him lay open on his knee, its pages marked with crude sketches of gestures, family, safe, promise, his thick fingers tracing them absently. He'd fumbled through a few more signs with Lucas before the boy drifted off, each awkward motion feeling like chipping away at rusted chains. But doubt gnawed at him, the kind that came from years of riding with the Vipers, where trust was earned in blood and fire, not soft-spoken gestures. Who was this nurse, really? Her story about her brother rang true, yet it left gaps, like potholes on a back road that could swallow a man whole. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, soft but deliberate, pulling Marcus from his thoughts. Elena appeared in the doorway, her scrubs slightly rumpled from the long shift, a steaming mug in her hands. She offered it to him without a word, the steam curling up like smoke signals. "For the road ahead," she murmured, her voice a low timbre that blended with the hum of the night monitor. Marcus took it, their fingers brushing again, and this time he didn't pull away quite so quickly. The warmth seeped into his palms, chasing the chill of the hospital's perpetual draft. They stepped into the hall together, the door clicking shut behind them with a finality that amplified the quiet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting their faces in stark relief. His shadowed with stubble and scars, hers illuminated with a quiet resolve. "He's opening up," Elena said, leaning against the nurse's station counter, her eyes scanning the empty ward as if guarding against unseen threats. "But it's fragile, like a first ride on unsteady wheels. Push too hard, and it tips." Marcus nodded, sipping the tea. Earthy, grounding, a far cry from the black coffee that fueled his dawn patrols. "I ain't pushing, just holding on." His gaze drifted to the east wing, where administrative lights still flickered late into the night. Whispers among the staff had reached him earlier, budget cuts hitting the pediatric floor hardest, supplies vanishing like mist, and rumors of a doctor skimming funds meant for kids like Lucas. It stirred the old fire in his chest, the protector who'd once led his crew against cartels encroaching on their territory. But this was no desert showdown. It was a subtle rot, eating from within. Elena's expression tightened, her fingers flexing as if itching to sign her frustrations away. She glanced over her shoulder, voice dropping to a near whisper. This place. It's not what it seems. I've seen charts altered, meds shorted. My transfer here wasn't just a move. I came because someone has to stand up. Her words carried the weight of a vow, one forged in the ashes of her brother's recovery, where she'd uncovered similar shadows in the city hospital, promises broken by those sworn to heal. She'd signed her oath then, hands steady. No more silence for the voiceless. Marcus's eyes narrowed, the mug pausing midway to his lips. The Iron Vipers had their code, loyalty above all. Justice swift and unyielding, but it was forged in the roar of engines, not the beep of machines. Yet here was a woman, not much older than his own 38 years, carrying a fight that mirrored his own. "You thinking of stirring the pot?" he asked, his tone laced with caution, the gravel of his voice echoing off the tiled walls. Places like this got layers. Peel one, and more slop underneath. She met his gaze, unflinching, the corridor's chill seeming to lift in the heat of shared purpose. "I'm not alone anymore," she replied, a faint smile ghosting her lips. It was the first crack in her professional armor, revealing the fighter beneath, the one who'd learned sign language, not just for her brother, but to arm herself against a world that muted the weak. Elena had promised him, in the dim light of his bedside vigil years ago, that she'd expose the corruption that delayed his care, the funds diverted while he suffered in silence. Now, in Ridgewood, that promise pulled her toward Marcus and Lucas, an unexpected alliance forming like thunderheads on the horizon. Back in the room, Lucas stirred, a soft whimper escaping his lips, the remnant of a nightmare, perhaps the twisted wreckage replaying in his dreams. Marcus moved first, pushing the door open with his shoulder, the mug set aside. He approached the bed, hands rising in the dim light. "It's okay, son. Dad's here." The signs were clumsy, but Lucas's eyes fluttered open, locking on his father's form. No flinch this time. Instead, a small hand reached out, mirroring safe. Elena watched from the threshold, her heart swelling with the quiet triumph of redemption's first steps. This boy, this family, they were her bridge now, chosen kin in a battle against indifference. As the night deepened, the three of them sat in companionable silence, the room a sanctuary amid the hospital's mechanical heartbeat. Marcus shared fragments of Viper lore, not the rough edges, but the bonds, brothers who'd ride through hell for one of their own, promises etched in ink and oath. Elena listened, her own tales unfolding in measured signs to Lucas, stories of resilient spirits, wolves and riders who found their way home. The boy's hands moved more freely, spelling out more, and she obliged, weaving narratives that bridged their worlds. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows like impatient knuckles. Marcus's phone vibrated once more. Jack's again, the text screen glowing. "Rhodes callin'. What's the word?" He silenced it, pocketing the device. The crew could wait. This ride was personal, a path of healing that demanded patience over throttle. Elena caught his eye, a nod passing between them, unspoken but binding. She'd seen the darkness in institutions before, how it preyed on the vulnerable, silencing voices like Lucas's. With Marcus's unyielding honor at her side, they could unearth the truth, fulfill old vows, and forge a legacy of quiet justice. Dawn's first blush crept in, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, the promise of a new day mirroring the tentative light in Lucas's eyes. As Elena prepared to end her shift, she signed to the boy, "See you soon," then turned to Marcus. "We're in this together," she said aloud, her voice steady as the rising sun. He grunted in agreement, the leather of his vest shifting like armor settling into place. Little did they know, the shadows in the east wing stirred too. A figure in a white coat watching from afar, files clutched tight, aware that the biker's presence and the nurse's probing eyes threatened to unravel carefully woven lies. The storm was building, ethical tensions coiling like a serpent ready to strike, testing loyalties and demanding sacrifices none had foreseen. The first rays of morning sun pierced the blinds of room 214 like tentative fingers, probing the quiet sanctuary where trust had begun to take root. Lucas shifted under his blanket. His small face relaxed in sleep. The faint lines of worry smoothed away for the first time in months. The room carried the lingering aroma of chamomile, mingling with the crisp scent of dew-kissed air, seeping through a cracked window. Marcus stood by the bedside, his silhouette a rugged outline against the golden light, the notebook still gripped in one hand like a talisman. He'd barely slept, his mind replaying the night's revelations, the nurse's confession, the shared fire of purpose that bridged his world of roaring engines and hers of silent vows. Elena had slipped away at the end of her shift, her footsteps fading down the corridor like echoes of a promise half fulfilled. But her words lingered. "We're in this together." Marcus felt the weight of it, heavier than the chain around his neck etched with the viper's serpent. He'd ridden through storms fiercer than this, bullet-riddled nights on forgotten borders, brothers lost to the road's unforgiving bite. But this battle simmered beneath the surface, a corruption that preyed on the innocent. Lucas, his boy, was the stake, and Marcus would not let shadows claim him again. He leaned down, brushing a lock of hair from Lucas's forehead, his touch lighter now, guided by the signs that had cracked the boy's fortress. "Rest easy." He signed clumsily to the sleeping form, the motion feeling like a step toward redemption. The hospital stirred awake around them, the symphony of a new day unfolding, carts rumbling like distant thunder, monitors beeping in steady cadence, the murmur of voices filtering through the halls. Marcus stepped out for air, his boots thudding softly on the linoleum as he made his way to the parking lot. His Harley waited, dew beading on its tank like tears unshed, the engine's promise of freedom calling to him. He straddled it briefly, not starting it, just feeling the familiar vibration in his bones, a reminder of the life he'd paused. Jax's texts had piled up overnight. Prez, clubs restless, words out about the kid. We ride? Marcus thumbed a reply. "Hold, this one's mine," and pocketed the phone. The Vipers were his chosen family, oaths forged in fire, but Lucas was blood, and Elena. She was the unexpected ally, her loyalty a quiet force that mirrored the honor he demanded from his crew. Back inside, the morning rounds brought a bustle that clashed with the fragile peace. Doctors in white coats swept through like generals on a battlefield, clipboards in hand, their words clipped and clinical. Marcus returned to find Lucas awake, sitting up with wide eyes fixed on the door, hands already forming tentative shapes. The boy signed, "Hungry?" A spark of initiative that swelled Marcus's chest with pride. He nodded, fumbling for breakfast soon. And for a moment, father and son shared a silent understanding, the air between them charged with unspoken healing. Elena reappeared mid-morning, her fresh scrubs a stark contrast to the rumpled ones of the night before, her hair tied back with the efficiency of someone who carried burdens without falter. She carried a tray, oatmeal dotted with berries, the steam rising like hopeful wisps, and set it down with a gentle clink. "Good morning," she said aloud, then switched to signs for Lucas. "Ready for stories?" The boy's nod was eager, his small fingers spelling wolf pack. Elena smiled, settling into the chair Marcus had vacated, her presence weaving the room into a cocoon of safety. Marcus watched from the corner, arms crossed, the leather of his vest whispering with each breath. He saw the way Lucas leaned in, the silence no longer a wall but a shared language, and it stirred the old promise to his late wife. "I'll keep him whole." As Elena signed the continuation of the wolf tale, a lone cub finding strength in unlikely kin, the door swung open abruptly. Dr. Harlan, the head of pediatrics, entered without knocking, his face a mask of practiced concern, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. The air shifted, thickening with unspoken tension. Harlan's reputation preceded him, whispers of favoritism and vanished supplies trailing like exhaust fumes. "Nurse Ramirez," he said, voice smooth as polished stone, "a word in the hall. And Mr. Hale, visiting hours are structured for a reason." His gaze flicked to Marcus, dismissive, as if the biker were just another shadow in the room. Elena rose smoothly, her expression neutral, but Marcus caught the flicker in her eyes, a warning glint, like headlights cutting through fog. She followed Harlan out, signing a quick "back soon" to Lucas, who watched with a furrowed brow. Marcus moved to the boy's side, his large hand resting on the bedrail. "Ain't nothing to worry about," he murmured, then signed it, the gesture steadier now. But worry gnawed at him. He'd overheard enough in the cafeteria. The doctor's hand in budget shortfalls, meds rerouted to private clinics, leaving kids like Lucas in the lurch. It reeked of the corruption he'd fought on the roads, where greed twisted loyalties into knots. In the corridor, voices rose faintly, Elena's measured tone clashing with Harlan's authoritative bark. Marcus strained to listen, the words fragmented. Unorthodox methods. Oversight. Funds allocation. His fists clenched, the Viper's code surging through him. Protect the pack, expose the rot. When Elena returned, her cheeks flushed. She signed to Lucas first, resuming the story to steady him, but her eyes met Marcus's with a new urgency. Later, over a shared coffee in the empty lounge, she confided in hushed tones. "He's covering tracks, saw a ledger, supplies for the PEDS ward diverted. If we push, it could expose everything." Marcus's jaw set, the steam from his cup mirroring the building storm in his chest. "Then we push, quiet, like scouting a trail." Elena nodded, her hand brushing the notebook on the table, a symbol of their growing pact. She'd come to Ridgewood chasing her own redemption, the promise to her brother echoing in every sign she made. Fight the silence. Now, with Marcus's unyielding honor beside her, the alliance solidified, a chosen family against institutional shadows. Lucas, sensing the shift, signed from the doorway. Together? They both affirmed it, hands moving in unison, the gesture binding them like chains of steel. By afternoon, the sun climbed high, casting harsh light across the lot where Marcus's bike gleamed, a beacon of the road ahead. Whispers spread through the staff, Elena's questions to suppliers, Marcus's lingering presence drawing eyes. Harlan watched from his office window, files stacked like battle plans, the threat of unraveling clear. But in room 214, as Elena taught Lucas a new sign, truth, the air hummed with resolve. Marcus felt the pull of old oaths, the redemption that came not from vengeance, but from standing firm. The corruption's tendrils reached deeper, ethical dilemmas coiling tighter. But with loyalty as their engine, they rode toward justice, one silent promise at a time. The day waned, shadows lengthening like doubts, yet the spark in Lucas's eyes burned brighter. Elena departed for her break, leaving father and son to practice signs, the room filled with the soft rhythm of hands speaking what voices could not. Outside, the wind whispered of coming rain, mirroring the storm brewing in the east wing. Marcus knew the ride would test them, loyalties strained, sacrifices demanded, but for his boy, for the nurse who'd bridged their worlds, he'd throttle through it all. If you enjoyed this chapter, please hit that like button. It helps spread these stories of quiet courage and unbreakable bonds. The afternoon light slanted through the hospital windows like shafts of fractured gold, illuminating dust motes that swirled in lazy eddies above the linoleum floor. Room 214 felt smaller now, the walls pressing in with the weight of unspoken plans, the air laced with the faint acrid bite of rain-soaked earth drifting in from the brewing storm outside. Lucas sat cross-legged on the bed, his small hands weaving through the air with growing confidence, practicing the sign for truth that Elena had taught him earlier. His fingers formed the shape deliberately, a hand to the chin, then extending outward like an arrow-piercing deception. Marcus mirrored him from the chair, his larger palms awkward but earnest, the motion pulling at the scars on his knuckles, reminders of brawls long past. The boy's eyes, bright with a spark that had been absent for months, met his father's, holding the gaze without flinching. It was a victory, small but seismic, like the first crack in parched desert ground before a flood. Marcus felt the old promise to his late wife stir in his chest. Keep him whole, no matter the road, a vow etched deeper than any tattoo. But as Lucas signed more, eagerness lighting his face, Marcus's thoughts drifted to the shadows Elena had unveiled. The hospital's underbelly, rotten with diverted funds and overlooked needs, threatened to swallow boys like his son whole. He couldn't ride away from this. It was a fight for the pack, chosen and blood alike. A distant rumble of thunder rolled in, vibrating through the glass panes, as if the sky itself echoed the tension coiling in Marcus's gut. He rose, stretching his stiff limbs, the leather vest creaking like old saddlebags. "Gonna grab some air, son," he said aloud, then signed it. The gestures steadier now, a bridge widening with each attempt. Lucas nodded, settling back with the picture book Elena had left, its pages filled with illustrations of wolves under moonlit skies, symbols of loyalty that bound wanderers into family. Marcus stepped into the corridor, the fluorescent hum overhead a stark contrast to the gathering gloom outside. The east wing loomed at the far end, its doors like guarded gates, where Dr. Harlan held court amid stacks of files and whispered deals. In the parking lot, the wind whipped through the chain-link fence, carrying the metallic tang of impending rain. Marcus's Harley crouched under the overcast sky, raindrops beginning to speckle its tank like hesitant tears. He didn't mount it. Instead, he leaned against the wall, pulling out his phone. Jax's messages blinked insistently. Prez, intel on that dock, ties to off-book suppliers. We roll in quiet. Marcus's thumb hovered, the Viper's code thrumming in his veins. Honor the oath, protect the vulnerable. He'd built the club on promises like that, brothers who'd stand against storms fiercer than this. But exposing Harlan meant dragging Eleanor deeper, risking her steady hands that had unlocked Lucas's silence. She was no stranger to loss, her brother's shadow a parallel to his own. Yet her fight was waged in charts and quiet inquiries, not the thunder of engines. Back inside, the lobby buzzed with the shift change, nurses exchanging hushed words over clipboards, their glances sliding toward Marcus like wary scouts. He caught snippets. Shortages again. Harlan signing off on cuts, each one fueling the fire. Elena emerged from a side door, her scrubs crisp, but her eyes shadowed, a folder tucked under her arm like contraband. She spotted him and approached, her steps measured, the corridor's chill doing little to cool the resolve in her posture. "Walk with me," she said softly, nodding toward the garden patio at the hospital's rear, a forgotten nook of wilted benches and overgrown hedges, shielded from prying eyes. They settled on a damp stone bench, the first fat raindrops pattering on the awning above like impatient fingers. Elena opened the folder, revealing photocopied pages, ledgers with discrepancies, signatures looping like serpents, funds meant for pediatric supplies rerouted to shadowy accounts. "This is it," she whispered, her voice steady but laced with the tremor of moral weight. "Harlan's been at it for years, skimming for his private practice, leaving wards like yours under-resourced, Lucas's therapies delayed because of this." Her hands clenched the papers, knuckles whitening, an echo of the signs she'd used to vow justice for her brother, whose care had been compromised by similar greed. Marcus scanned the documents, his brow furrowing like storm clouds. The numbers blurred into faces, kids like Lucas silenced not just by trauma, but by neglect. "Bastards playing with lives," he growled, the gravel in his voice matching the thunder's growl. "Vipers don't tolerate that. We expose him, clean." But doubt flickered. This wasn't a midnight raid on a rival's hideout. Harlan had connections, city officials, lawyers, who could twist the truth into chains. Elena met his gaze, rain now drumming a steady rhythm on the metal roof. "I came here for this," she admitted, her words a confession wrapped in resolve. "After my brother, I promised I'd never let silence win again. But alone, it's whispers. With you, with your crew's reach, it becomes a roar." The alliance solidified in that moment, forged not in ink or leather, but in shared scars and unbreakable oaths. Marcus nodded, pocketing the folder. "Call Jax. We'll scout, gather proof. No guns, no noise, just truth riding point." Elena's smile was faint, a crack of light in the downpour, her hand briefly touching his arm, a gesture of chosen kinship, warm against the cooling air. She'd lost her blood family to the road's cruelty. But here, in this rain-lashed garden, she found echoes of redemption. A biker whose honor matched her quiet fire, a boy whose signs wove them together. Thunder cracked overhead as they returned inside, the hospital's sterile glow a facade over the brewing confrontation. In room 214, Lucas waited, his hands already signing "back" when they entered. Elena knelt by the bed, resuming the wolf tale with fluid gestures, the story now laced with themes of packs uniting against hidden predators. Marcus joined, his signs improving, describing riders who chased shadows for justice. The boy's laughter bubbled silently, shoulders shaking, a soundless joy that pierced the room's tension like sunlight through clouds. As evening fell, the storm raged fully, lightning etching the sky in jagged veins, mirroring the ethical lightning coiling within. Marcus stepped out to make the call, his voice low into the phone. "Jax, gear up light, hospital run, expose a snake in the nest." The Vice's affirmation came swift, the loyalty of the Vipers a engine humming in the background. Eleanor lingered with Lucas, teaching him alliance, her fingers linking theirs in a circle of trust. But in the East Wing, Harlan paced his office, the rain lashing the windows like accusations, his secure line buzzing with warnings of the nurse's prying and the biker's shadow. He clutched a burner phone, dialing contacts who could bury scandals deep, unaware that the moral tide had turned. Night deepened. The hospital, a vessel adrift in the tempest, its corridors echoing with the patter of rain and the pulse of impending reckoning. Marcus returned, his face set like weathered granite, and signed to Lucas, "Family strong." The boy nodded, eyes gleaming with unspoken understanding, the silence now a weapon of clarity. Elena watched them, her heart swelling with the poetry of redemption, promises fulfilled not in vengeance, but in the quiet power of standing unbowed. Outside, engines idled faintly in the distance, the Vipers assembling like guardians of the night, ready to ride for honor's sake. Yet as the clock ticked toward midnight, a shadow stirred in the hall, a nurse, loyal to Harlan, slipping notes under doors, sowing doubt. Elena sensed it, her instincts honed by past battles, and whispered to Marcus, "We move careful. The rot fights back." He grunted agreement, the weight of their pact settling like rain-soaked earth, fertile for growth amid the storm. Lucas slept soundly now, dreams signed in safety, while father and ally planned in hushed tones, the chosen family weaving justice from threads of loss and loyalty. The dawn would bring confrontation, ethical lines drawn sharp as switchblades, testing if promises could outride corruption's gale. In the heart of the tempest, redemption beckoned, one silent oath at a time. The storm's fury peaked as midnight approached, lightning forking across the sky like veins of fractured silver, illuminating the hospital's facade in stark, fleeting bursts. Rain hammered the roof of Ridgewood General, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out the hum of monitors and the whisper of footsteps in the corridors. Inside room 214, the air hung heavy with the scent of wet earth and ozone, seeping through the sealed windows like an omen. Lucas slept fitfully, his small chest rising and falling under the blanket, hands curled loosely, as if clutching invisible signs in his dreams. Marcus stood vigil by the bed, his silhouette etched against the flickering light from the storm, the leather of his vest damp from an earlier dash outside. The notebook lay forgotten on the side table, its pages a testament to bridges built in silence. Elena paced the narrow space between the bed and the door, her scrubs clinging slightly from the humidity, her dark eyes sharp with the edge of a woman who'd stared down shadows before. The folder of evidence burned in her mind, ledgers of betrayal, signatures that twisted oaths into lies. Harlan's corruption had festered too long, siphoning resources from the vulnerable, delaying care that could have eased pains like Lucas's. Her promise to her brother echoed in the thunder. Expose the dark, give voice to the silenced. Now, with Marcus at her side, that vow intertwined with his own. The biker's unyielding code to protect his pack, blood and chosen alike. A low rumble cut through the rain, not thunder but engines, the Vipers arriving like ghosts on the wind-swept lot. Jax led the quiet convoy, a dozen bikes idling under the downpour, their riders cloaked in rain-slicked leathers, faces set with the grim loyalty of brothers forged in fire. No revving challenges, no show. This was a surgical strike, scouts slipping in through service doors with hidden cameras and encrypted recorders. Marcus had briefed them earlier, his voice a gravelly command over the line, eyes on the snake. Proof first, then we call the thunder. Jax nodded from the shadows now, water streaming from his beard as he handed Marcus a slim device, a micro-recorder primed for Harlan's office. We got your six, Prez, Jax murmured, his breath fogging in the chill night air. For the kid, for the road. Marcus clasped his forearm, the grip ironclad. A silent oath renewed. The Vipers dispersed like smoke, melting into the storm. Two tailing Harlan's night shift allies, others monitoring the East Wing's back exits. Elena watched from the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass, heart pounding with the rhythm of justice long delayed. She'd never ridden with a crew like this, but their honor mirrored her own quiet crusade, a family chosen in the face of institutional rot. The confrontation brewed in the East Wing, where Harlan's office glowed like a false beacon amid the blackout-prone storm. The doctor paced behind his desk, the room cluttered with files and a half-empty bottle of scotch, the amber liquid catching lightning flashes. Rain lashed the panes, but his mind churned with panic, whispers from a loyal nurse about the biker's crew. Elena's relentless questions peeling back layers of his scheme. Funds diverted to his offshore accounts, supplies sold on the black market. It had started small, a padding of expenses to fund his lavish life, but greed had grown unchecked, leaving wards like pediatrics starved. Now the noose tightened, ethical lines blurring into desperation. Elena and Marcus moved as one, slipping down the corridor under the guise of a routine check. The hospital's night shift thinned the halls, only the occasional orderly pushing a cart, oblivious to the undercurrent. Eleanor's keycard granted access to the admin level, her hand steady on the scanner, despite the adrenaline surging like engine throttle. "He's alone," she whispered, voice barely audible over the storm's roar. Marcus nodded, the recorder clipped to his vest, hidden beneath the open jacket. They paused at the door, her knock sharp, professional, unyielding. Harlan opened it a crack, his face paling at the sight of them, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Nurse Ramirez, this is irregular, and you—" His gaze flicked to Marcus, disdain curling his lip. "Security's been notified about unauthorized visitors." But Elena stepped forward, folder in hand, her posture a wall of moral steel. "We know, Doctor. The ledgers, the rerouted supplies, pediatric funds vanishing while kids like Lucas wait for basics. It's over." The room crackled with tension, lightning illuminating Harlan's denial like a spotlight on a stage of lies. Baseless accusations. He snarled, but his voice wavered, hands trembling as he reached for the phone. Marcus loomed in the doorway, silent thunder, his presence a reminder of the engines waiting outside. "Ain't accusations when it's on paper," he growled, activating the recorder with a subtle tap. Elena laid out the evidence, page by page, discrepancies glaring under the desk lamp, signatures matching his flourish. Harlan's facade crumbled, sweat beading on his brow, the storm outside mirroring his unraveling. "You think this ends it? I have friends. Pull strings that bury people like you." But the Viper's proof streamed live to Jax's secure line. Hidden cams capturing a nurse's confession in the break room, audio of Harlan's earlier calls to shady suppliers. Elena's eyes burned with the fire of redemption, her signs to her brother flashing in memory. Truth wins. "Not anymore," she said, voice steady. "The board gets this at dawn. Resign or face the full weight." Harlan slumped into his chair, the fight draining like rain into gutters, his empire of deceit exposed in the quiet power of integrity. Dawn broke grey and sodden, the storm spent, leaving puddles that reflected the hospital's facade like shattered mirrors. Police arrived discreetly, tipped by anonymous evidence. Harlan led away in cuffs, his white coat a mockery of purity lost. The staff buzzed with shock, whispers turning to nods of respect for Eleanor, the nurse who'd pierced the silence. Marcus watched from the parking lot, his crew dispersing with salutes. Jax clapping his shoulder. "Rode true, Prez. Pax stronger." The Vipers had uncovered ties to city corruption, their reach turning whispers into a roar that promised broader justice. In room 214, sunlight filtered weakly through clearing skies, warming the space where Lucas sat up, hands signing eagerly. What happened? Elena knelt, her gestures fluid. Bad shadows gone. Truth won. Marcus joined, his signs now practiced, describing the night's vigil in simple strokes. Family fought. Safe now. The boy's face lit with understanding, a full smile breaking free, silent but radiant. Eleanor's eyes met Marcus's, a shared glance heavy with gratitude and something deeper, promises fulfilled, scars mending into strength. She'd found her chosen kin here, the biker's loyalty echoing the brother she'd lost, weaving their redemptions into one unbreakable thread. As the morning unfolded, the hospital breathed easier, supplies restocked, therapies flowing freely for Lucas and others. Marcus lingered, no longer the outsider, but a guardian woven into the fabric. He signed to his son, "Ride soon." The promise of open roads ahead, family whole. Lucas nodded, hands linking with his father's and Elena's in a circle of trust. Outside, the Harley gleamed under the emerging sun, engine purring to life, a call to horizons where honor rode eternal. In the quiet aftermath, bonds forged in storm and silence endured, a testament to justice morale and leal-dead inconditional. The chosen family, marked by loss but lifted by oaths, faced the dawn unbowed, their legacy one of courageous hearts and silent triumphs. Thank you for joining this journey of silent promises and unbreakable bonds. If these stories of redemption touch your heart, please subscribe and turn on notifications for more tales from the Road of Honor.